Right, welcome back. Now, as promised, we're going to have that conversation about consumer trends. Now, let me explain what happened and how we got here. So, mid last month, that is BSD Group and Ipsos Synovate released a report. It's called the most loved brands by women in Kenya. This is their third edition, and they're here to tell me what they found out during that research. Now, the last time I hosted them, the report was not released yet, so we couldn't get into the details of it. But today we have all the time, and we have the report. I have seen the report, and I'm sure most of you have also seen the report. But my guest this afternoon, from my immediate left, we have Eva Morara, who's the founder and CEO of BSD Group. Eva, welcome back.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And of course, we have Koi Kariuki from Ipsos. She's the senior researcher at Ipsos Synovate. Koi, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to have you.
All right, let's get this conversation on the road. First things first, I want you to help us understand, Koi, from this research compared to the first two, what are some of the things that you have noticed, either differences or similarities in terms of consumer trends?
So I think having the third edition of this report is nice. We can track the data from 2021 when we came out of COVID. So that was a big story and what influenced how consumers were using brands and brands that they love to use. And then into 2022, if you remember around this time last year, I remember the fuel prices went up.
Yeah.
The discussion around inflation went up. In that same year, we saw an 18% increase in women who are saying that the cost of living is affecting their economic empowerment. Now into 2023, inflation has shot up again. And we're seeing that there's a significant jump, I think almost 10% increase compared to last year, of women who are saying poor economic empowerment is an issue. That said, when we look at the female consumer, she's participating more and more in purchasing goods and services. Coming out of 2021 when we had issues because we lost jobs in COVID, businesses had actually also gone down. So we had a bit of time to recover in 2022. 2023, we've seen that even been reflected in how women are spending more across brands.
All right. Now, if I want to rope you into this conversation, it's a good thing that Koi talked about the issue of cost of living. And when you look at inflation, now we're at 9.2%. This has gone up significantly compared to last year when this report was coming out. From where you sit, what is the biggest concern for women consumers?
Thank you, and I think that's a really good question because I think the reality of our times has been reflected very, very powerfully in this report. From what we have gathered, women are still, first and foremost, I think we celebrate the fact that her level of affluence seems to have increased, that she's informing increasingly the decisions of purchase across a wider set of different products and services, which is a really good thing. But that said, we can see a correlation between the determination of what she is choosing to purchase with the reality of the inflation that you've made good reference to. So suggesting that price or affordability is a big consideration metric for her as she is, in the transaction or as she is relating today with the brand of her choice. What has also been inferred, and I think it's a carryover from last wave, accessing the brand that she loves. I suppose the more convenient it is to her, the better. E-commerce has also showed up pretty interestingly in this wave. So the level of women's participation in online purchases across the country has also laid an authoritative stamp, and I think that's a really good thing. So if you're a marketer, if you're a brand owner, then you need to ask yourself, what is the meaning of this data and what's the insight that will profit your respective business strategy?
All right, Koi, let's go back to the research itself. Now, what is the knock-on effect of high inflation rate? And as far as consumption is concerned, of course, we know that this has an impact in terms of how much we spend on average. So from the report that you have released, how much do you see women spending on average?
So one of the key metrics that we saw has shifted over the past few waves is how much of their monthly income is going towards household goods and services.
Yeah.
How much are they spending in the supermarkets, for example? And that has gone up by 4%. And if we're seeing that shift, there's also deprioritization of maybe some categories where they used to spend, but that was seen as more nice to have. They're still spending because they still want to have access to that product or service, but they're trying to see how do we stretch that shilling. So the second thing that we've seen is brands that were big during the first wave. You think about brands within home care, brands within personal care, for example. Especially during COVID, we were very keen on making sure we use brands that we trust, brands that are heritage brands, because we had very many health concerns.
Yeah.
Coming out of COVID, we're seeing women now saying, hey, okay, we have to stretch our shilling. What other brands can we actually use? And they're using newer brands in the market. We've seen brands grow up the rankings in the past 3 waves. And to the effect or detriment, to a certain extent, of heritage brands that they trusted and maybe have trusted for a long, long time. So now there's that aspect of price that Eva was talking about. But if you're using a brand and you're trying to, you're using continue, like actually this brand works for me. So the element of price may be the gateway, but you have to retain that customer. You have to make sure that your product is working for her. It resonates with her. And some of the brands that have been able to make it even to the top 10 in this wave, not only do they work functionally, but they also connect to the consumer through their communication, which stood out in wave 2 and into wave 3.
And of course, we'll be talking about the issue of communication and what brands need to do to up their game. If I want to bring you into this conversation again. When you look at brand loyalty, we know that this has been changing. We know that consumers have changed over time. From where you sit, what is that one thing that you would say consumers are attached to a certain brand because of ABC? Or what is the leading reason why people are dropping brands and opting for other brands?
Okay. So obviously, consumers continue to be, in what we call in marketing, as irrational in their decision making as is possible. But that said, there is definitely the current consideration around affordability. Price is definitely something that is driving, perhaps if we pick it up from what Koi has said, creating new relationships with brands that perhaps are serving functionality, but you're willing to say, let me try this relationship with you because I can afford you. So that's one. The other one that is pretty pronounced is how much do you cause my love trigger around the thing that you do for community, the thing you do for society, the thing that causes me to fall in love with you over and over. So I think there is an important conversation for brands to have around their perhaps citizenship strategies, around the things that they are doing to influence and make society better. So there's something going on there that is interesting. But then perhaps another trend that was interesting and that has emerged is a statistic around the fact that of every 2 mothers in Kenya, across Kenya, 1 is a single mother and not living with her partner, not, married, raising children on her own. So there's an interesting conversation there to be had around, what does that then mean in terms of her consideration set when faced with different brands to choose from. Number 2, who's persuading her the most through their communication by recognizing her important role of being single mother, therefore being single-led household, and therefore perhaps influencing her decision on what it is she will choose over any other brand. So those were some interesting things. I don't know whether you have anything you could chime in.
So I think, Koi, before you add on to that issue, the question that also comes to mind is how much influence do women have in terms of household expenditure?
As we said, women are participating more, wave on wave. Yeah. Now we're seeing at least 90% of adult women are participating in the purchase of goods in the household. So if you're really not connecting with her, you're missing out your market. And the fact that it's growing wave on wave just speaks to the fact that this data and this information is relevant, so that you're connecting with her in the right ways. Yeah.
All right, so let me bring you back to that same issue. And I want you to help me understand, in terms of their consumption and contribution to the economy, how big is it or how small is it?
How big is it? Now, obviously, we do the study amongst women, so we are not surveying men. But we do know globally and also within Kenya, there's still that inequality, there's that gap. I think, I don't know if it's 20 to 30% in terms of the gender pay gap within Kenya. There's a study that was done in 2019. And that is amongst, obviously, the brands that they were able to, or companies were able to speak to. Now, when we speak to the wider business market, if I can call it that, where we've got more SMEs, micro enterprises, etc., those gaps may also still be there. Now, when we've looked at previous data, we have seen in terms of affluence, men versus women, when you get to your top socioeconomic class, there's still that gap. That gap and that statistic has been there since as late as last year. We did a national study at Ipsos. Now, when we look at this particular study, and also across the past 3 waves, we're also seeing that gap. Yes, we've talked about inequality in the workplace and the pay gap, but also amongst women. Women who are employed, generally we're seeing a higher income earners. And women who are self-employed generally contribute economically as much as a woman who's a part-time employment. Now, the issue to do with inequality, and I think we might speak about it later, is one of the biggest issues that we found across the data. And if we're thinking about women's aspirations, when women are young, when they're working, when they're in school, they want to be employed, they want to work at a big corporate. But by the time they get to maybe 25 years plus, they're saying, okay, you have your family to balance. Eva spoke about single motherhood, that being equal to women who live with their partners. Those challenges in terms of flexibility, in terms of rising up the ranking, the corporate ranks. Again, we had women who spontaneously were telling us about the issues they face being hired. So they move more into entrepreneurship, and there's a way we need to empower them there.
But I also want to say that there's another way to look at it, because this year's study, and in fact consistently, there are things that women would express as their concerns. So, for example, domestic violence, issues of sexual violence, issues of inequality at work, issues of not having economic empowerment opportunity. And perhaps the other way to look at your question is, if we mitigated on these things, then women would be able to make a higher degree of contribution to productivity, which then speaks into expanding whatever the exchequer will ultimately collect from all of us, and then just having a more level playing field in terms of the things that would serve as their constraints.
All right, now I'm actually told that we might be running out of time. So as we wind up this conversation, the one thing that I want you both to tell me is, looking into the future, what more do brands need to do to make sure that they speak particularly to these customers who are spending more?
So, here I am wishing that this was a 4-hour conversation, but, we're really glad to be here and just give a sneak preview. Brands in this market must first invest in gathering this data from us. Call Ipsos, get a copy of the study. As we go into the second quarter, when we are all trying to think of increasing margin, increasing market share, get a copy of this study. www.top100brands.africa, or visit the Ipsos or BSD Group websites to find more details. This is a must-have, because you are otherwise ignoring a whole new market segment that could be the margin or profit or market share increase that your business is looking for.
Koi?
Interestingly, we're having a conversation at the office today talking about ESG and how important it is for businesses. And are businesses really putting into practice, or are they just doing, CSR, PR stunts here and there? But thinking about the fact that the woman is a huge consumer, I mean, she's having a lot of influence, why don't we see how we can use the data that Eva has now kind of explained how you can get to see how you can build it into your ESG strategy, a sustainable strategy. I think the conversations that Eva's had with several brands and clients about what can we do to extend the data and make it a program so they remain more relevant with women.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for making time for us. And of course, these are conversations that I would have hoped that we had more time to just continue talking about some of these issues. And of course, the biggest issue has always been the issue of the income inequality, that income gap. When you look at the opportunities that are out there for women compared to the opportunities that are there for men, that gap has always been there.
That's right.
How do we bridge that gap? And
shrink it.
And of course, I definitely will be looking forward to your next report, hoping that is one of the things that you will be featuring.
Yes, we have some omnibuses. So every quarter, we will be updating on the data, and all that information is available on our website.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we'll definitely hold you to that. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jimmy Mbogo. Mbiu ya KTN is up next.